Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Fertility podcast, the place where we dive deep into all things fertility. I'm Dr. Brenna Squires, a clinical psychologist and fertility support coach, here to bring you the knowledge, resources, and expert insights you need to feel confident along your journey to parenthood. So let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Empowered Fertility podcast. Today we are talking about something you have probably heard a lot about, but you really don't know much about it. We are talking about inflammation. Specifically, we're talking about inflammation and how this impacts our fertility. So if you haven't already done so, I want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. On this podcast, we talk all about how to improve your health and your fertility from different experts in this field. And today I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Christine Berry. She is a doctor of holistic health who has been helping clients reverse chronic health conditions naturally and heal them from the inside out for over 20 years. She is the owner of BeFit Holistic Health and Wellness, and one thing she specializes in is inflammation. So I'm thrilled to have her here to share her expertise with us today. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Berry.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Squires. It's nice to have the ability to be able to be on this podcast and share with women, particularly what their bodies are doing, what they need. So I am, obviously you shared, I have a PhD in natural medicine and I'm a board certified doctor of holistic health. And it really just started with my own health journey, as many of our journeys do, right? It kind of brings us full circle to being able to help other people. And that's really where it started for me. And now I'm able to share my own personal experience and that I also learned education wise. So it makes me a little different as a practitioner than maybe some that other women have gone to in the past.
Yes, and can you share a little bit more about your experience in this field? Because it's been over 20 years. And I know you mentioned earlier on when we were talking about how you were able to heal yourself, and then now you've been helping other people. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So my journey actually began over 20 years ago when I was looking for ways to be able to help myself. So selfishly, I wanted to get education because I was struggling with my own weight after having two kids and just kind of found myself like, what do I do now? I had done all the diets and then I started getting interested in exercise. It was not anything I'd ever done as a young adult or a teenager. I rode horses. That was my exercise, but I never lifted weights. I didn't do anything strategic, right? So through that, I started learning a lot about my body and started learning a lot about hormones and started discovering some of the things I had with my own fertility or infertility, like getting pregnant with my first child, how that was being impacted by my lifestyle. And I didn't know that. I thought it was just a diagnosis I had and a destiny I was given, and I just had to deal with it, right? That's just what we're told. And so through all of that, the more I learned about myself, I really kind of hit a wall at one point in time and thought, what am I going to do now? Because I had developed a lot of health conditions just kind of out of the blue. They're not really out of the blue, but for me, it seemed like that. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and kind of was at a loss for what to do. And so that's really where it all began. And it helped me understand that there's more to it than just that diagnosis or that symptom, or even that event that happens, right? We're talking about fertility. And so a lot of people get wrapped up in just the whole sex hormone issue with fertility, but they forget your body is a whole functioning piece. It's not just parts stuck together in a mysterious way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because that is something that we often forget. It's a whole functioning piece. And especially when it comes to fertility, we like to target certain organs. We like to target certain body parts where we'll say, well, we're going to look at the ovaries, or we're going to look at the gut, or we're going to look at this one particular thing, but we forget that they're all connected. So one one supplement you take for the gut might not be helpful for your overall picture. And I find that so fascinating.
Yeah, and it's interesting how different organs need different nutrients. And so we often think, just like you said, we want to just take vitamin D to raise our vitamin D levels on a blood lab marker, which is great, but it's affecting almost every part of your body in ways that we have no idea. It's not just about sunlight and getting a tan and maybe mental clarity and focus and not having depression and anxiety. It's really integral in a lot of functions of our body. And when vitamin D is low, for instance, it can affect fertility, it can affect gut health function, it can affect mood and sleep and just sexual function, libido, in the mix of all that as well.
Yeah. And that's an excellent example of how one thing can impact so many things, but we don't really realize that because, like you said, a lot of times we're looking at the blood lab marker. We're looking at a specific number and trying to increase that without taking it into context of what is it doing for the whole picture. And I know one of those big things is inflammation. So we hear the word inflammation thrown around a lot, but there's not much information about what exactly it is. So can you share what exactly is inflammation and what role does it serve in the body?
Yeah, I'll just keep it really simple because it can be a lot of things and have this very technical, definition to it. But I really say it's like a bear that's kind of aggravated and upset because it's hungry and it's tired and maybe it misses its family. And then somebody comes along and starts poking it with a stick because they just think, oh, this will, be fun to watch what happens. And that's what we're doing to our body. And then before long, really that bear becomes very angry and maybe, starts like jumping on your car or tearing up your house or trying to attack you and eat you. Like there's all those things that can happen with just that single thing that happened with the bear, right? So our bodies are that way. Our bodies are always trying to address things that are going on. We have so much going on in our environments that we can't control and so many things we can control. And so, we'll just take stress for instance because that's a huge thing. Everybody has stress. If you're breathing and awake today, you're stressed in some form or fashion, whether you think you are or not. Your body is under stress. We work out, we're stressed. And we're sitting here under these lights, and that causes stress on our bodies. So our bodies are always constantly trying to address all of these different things. And when it doesn't have the nutrients that it needs, or if it doesn't have the support it needs from other organs, because they're all interconnected. Your stomach isn't separate from your brain, isn't separate from your lungs, isn't separate from your ovaries. They're all interconnected, and they're all constantly signaling to each other. They're basically a team. So think about that if you have a team at your office or a sports team or even your own family, right? Everybody has their own function. And when one of those things isn't functioning optimally, then somebody else has got to pick up the slack, right? And so it's your body's always trying to it's basically just running around all day long, trying to fix and patch and bind and detoxify and hydrate and just send signals. And it's just an amazing functioning piece of equipment that we take for granted because there's so many biological processes that have to go on every single day for us just to actually be here. We're not having to think about breathing. We're not having to think about, digestion while we're sitting here talking. It all just works.
Yeah. And so with that, the way that you explained it, does that mean that inflammation is a sign that something is wrong?
Yes. So we're going to have some varying amounts of inflammation, just because we don't live in a perfect world, right? We have a lot of overload on our body, so there's going to be a small amount of inflammation that everyone's going to have to deal with, and our bodies know how to handle that. It knows how to go in and calm things down. It's basically like if you have a rash and you put an ointment on it and it soothes it right and it takes the redness away. That's the idea of what the body's doing internally. But when we have all these outside factors and even things that we're doing on our own, things we're eating, then we're just creating basically fuel to the fire. And so, that's another good example people can really understand is when you're building a fire and you start, putting more wood on it or you're putting charcoal or something like that, it's going to start to get really hot and get really high. And that's what inflammation is like in our body. It makes everything go on overdrive, and our bodies don't know how to handle that for long periods of time.
Yeah, that's interesting that it makes the body go on overdrive. And
Hmm.
so I've heard a lot about how inflammation is a driver for so many health issues, particularly chronic health issues. And can you share some of the biggest ones that you see when it comes to chronic inflammation?
Yes. So, I'll kind of just group these together, but things like irritable bowel, constipation, or IBS, IBD, those are kind of all grouped into that whole gut health circle. And that's one of the big things that we see. Other things are mold toxicity. So we see people who are exposed to mold or other chemicals create some inflammation in the body. And then we also see sex hormones or just hormones in general out of whack. So we say hormone balancing. What we typically think of in our minds is we think of the sex hormones, right? Progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, or some of those, FSH, LH. But what it really means is all hormones that are producing in the body, even things like insulin. So again, we kind of see these things because they're symptoms that we see arise from that, but they're not isolated. So when people come to me and they say, "Well, I have XYZ or I've been diagnosed with XYZ," because I am not a licensed medical doctor that diagnoses you. I'm not going to say, "Oh, I see your labs. You have X." My job is to be a detective and an investigator to see, what's going on internally and how the cells are reacting and things that you would never even see or think to look at in the body because you can't feel it most of the time. Instead of just looking at the outer surface of what the symptoms are revealing, there's always something deeper.
Yeah.
Even when you have something like houseplants or plants in your yard and you see that the leaves are starting to fall off, you don't just go chop the leaves off. You start thinking, okay, am I not watering it enough? Am I not giving it enough fertilizer or the right temperatures? You start looking deeper, right? But we fail to do that with our own bodies. We tend to do that with other things, but we don't look at ourselves that same way.
Yeah, so if we look deeper, what are some of the causes of chronic inflammation? I know you mentioned stress is one of them, or emotional stress could be one of them. What are some of the other things?
Yeah, so emotional stress is a big one, and most people really take that for granted. And it can be emotional stress from even your own birth. It's hard to really understand that, but traumatic experiences in our life, our bodies remember. It could be childhood, it could be something recent, it could be a divorce, or it could be a health impact on a family member. So all of those are remembered in our brains. And so it sort of creates that PTSD idea constantly over and over, and your body's on overdrive because we go into what's called a fight or flight situation. And it's good because if there was someone chasing you and you needed to get away, then you need to be able to run and have the stamina to do that, right? You've seen these heroic firefighters or just random citizens who will pick up a car off of a person, right? Or do things that you're like, how on earth did because that's a mechanism that God's put in our body, right? To be able to survive. But when it's done, when our bodies are in that fight or flight for long periods of time, it could be for someone long, could be a month, or it could be 10 years for another person, that um, it starts depleting the body. And so that chronic, fight or flight that's put on the body, you don't need it, right? Because every day that you go to work or you go outside and get in your car, your body doesn't need to run from something. But internally, it thinks it does because of all these outside stresses. So that was kind of a long answer to the whole emotional health, but it's really important because people don't wanna go there first, they wanna go there last,
Mhm.
but that sometimes is the first thing that we need to
Yeah.
look at because that is gonna hold you back even if you're doing all the other right things. So stress, and then toxicity. So we're inundated with toxins from the air we breathe, the water we drink, the things we touch, the clothes we wear, foods that we eat, shampoos. The list can go on. I mean, we could talk about that for an hour. Um, and so there's a lot of things in our life that we can begin to gradually change because when we're taking in a lot of things that are especially like phytoestrogens, we're imbalancing our own hormones without even understanding it, right? We're doing it just in our daily lives. We're not doing it intentionally, but they're affecting our hormones internally. They're creating toxicity. Tiny bits of plastic, for instance, can be in your body. And the body is really smart, right? Because we are created to be amazing creatures. And the body will go in and take those toxic substances and they will wrap them up in your fat cells and bind them. So that's the protective mechanism because you don't want all that stuff circulating all the time. And so, when that happens, and obviously, the more fat cells you have, the more room we have to carry all those burdens. And and so, when we have all that, then the body is just basically stuck in this toxic environment. I mean, it's in its own toxic environment all the time. So we talk about, that toxicity. Um, and then you can also look at deficiencies. So inflammation can be also from deficiencies. So when the body needs, we'll use magnesium, for instance. If the body needs magnesium for all these different processes that it needs to go through during the day and at night when we're sleeping and resting and recovering, and it doesn't get that, it's going to start going somewhere else to look for something else just to survive, just to keep, the body's just going to keep looking for those things. So we don't ever see those show up until maybe we have restless leg, or maybe we can't sleep at night, or maybe we're getting migraine headaches. But nobody correlates that to a deficiency
Hmm.
in a inflammation state because your body gets angry inside because it is constantly on overdrive. And that's the problem is that this constant overdrive state is what drives the body to burn out. Essentially, it's not going to actually burn out one day until we die. Hopefully, a long life, right? But it's using up all its resources. So you are not able to replenish them fast enough, even if you
Hmm.
ate a perfectly healthy diet. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things you have to be doing to fill yourself back up and improve your body every single day to replenish that because otherwise like I said, we're going to have some inflammation in us all the time. Every time I go out and lift weights, I'm creating inflammation. It's for a specific reason, right? I'm tearing the muscles apart and breaking them down, those tiny fibers, to rebuild and grow better. But that's why I'm sore. I'm sore because there's inflammation. And so we don't necessarily think about that, but that's inflammation. The body has to send all of its troops to
Yeah.
go over and handle all that inflammation. And if you've got that from here all the way to the toes, it's got a lot to do, right? And you wonder
Yeah.
why you're not feeling well and you're sick and you're tired and you're, just on a struggle bus every single day.
Yeah. So it sounds like inflammation is kind of the early sign or early trigger for a symptom that we see. Like you said, if you're
Yes.
sore, it's because
Mhm.
of that inflammation and it's telling the body we need this to happen. Go do it. And if you're in a chronic state of inflammation and the body's in overdrive trying to fix this and fix that, that's kind of what leads to burnout.
Yeah, it does. And, it can be something as simple as a cold, um, or it can be something as devastating as cancer. And so you have that spectrum of inflammation in the body and how it particularly acts.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we are causing, well, probably most of the time, 99.999% of the time, we're causing our own inflammation. We are doing these things redundantly day after day and not understanding the repercussions of what we're doing until we have the event happen, right? And then, like I said, one day I woke up and I had all these list of things that were wrong with me. Well, no, these had been happening
Yeah.
throughout my life, even as a young child, and they accumulated. So our bodies are, I kind of compartmentalize it like little glasses. You can use shot glasses, for instance. Some people have shot glass size buckets for toxins and stress and all the things. Some people have like trash can size, big, 40, 50 gallons. and everybody's buckets can be filled at different rates, and then they will overflow when they're full, right? So that overflowing happens for everyone at a different time because we're all individual, we're all unique. Even though we're all humans, we all have different genetics, emotional capabilities, and our lifestyles are all different.
Yes. And how does inflammation play a role in, let's say, autoimmune? Because that's something that the immune system's acting up. And so there's this constant, it sounds like there would be this constant state of inflammation there.
Yeah, so I'll use an example from my own personal journey is I had Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune similar to Hashimoto's, but just the opposite. So, it's kind of on overdrive, and that was a warning sign that something needed to change. But I wasn't educating myself. I didn't seek out the right resources. And so I ended up having a procedure done and then had to be on medication for the rest of my life. Had I understood my body at that point in time and understood that that was a warning sign that my thyroid needed some help and that it wasn't just my thyroid, there were other physiological things, metabolic things going on. I already knew there were some hormonal issues going on, but no one would ever listen to me. They said, "Oh, your labs are fine." And how many of you've probably heard that? Your labs are fine, everything's normal, but you don't feel fine. You feel like something's off. Listen to your intuition. We know our body's best, right? Because we carry it every single day. We're in our bodies every single day. Nobody else is who we are. And so, the autoimmune is basically can be triggered by something, usually some sort of stressful event. And stress for everybody's different, right? Stress can be a major event like a parent passing away, or it can be a stressful event like, you got in a fight with your best friend. And so everybody's stress levels can be different. That can stimulate the body to go into an extra overdrive, that fight or flight, and it can't ever come down from that. And so some of our organs that are weaker will take the hit from that. And so autoimmune can look different for a lot of different people. We can have multiple ranges of autoimmunity, and it to me it's just a label. To me, autoimmunity is just inflammation. I just say it's just inflammation. When you have a issue with your thyroid or something else in your body, that doesn't mean that you're labeled as that. It just means, hey, I need to pay attention. Your body's screaming for some help. And so, with autoimmunity, it's not something that I think we look at it as again that diagnosis, but I think we need to take ourselves back and say, you know, what is it that the body's telling us we need?
Yeah.
And don't let yourself be labeled by your disease or diagnosis.
Yeah. And and with that, when you talk about what does the body need, let's move into hormone imbalances. And so
Yeah.
what is the connection between inflammation and hormone imbalances? Specifically, how does it disrupt things like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, those types of hormones?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things. We can look at gut health. That's a big important part of my practice. And one of the very first foundational things we work on, people think, well, what is my gut? I'm pooping every day. What does that have to do with anything? It's bigger than that, right? So our gut has its own microbiome, our mouth has its own microbiome, our skin, parts of our body have their own microbiome. So it's little world and environment. And when there's parts of that are out of balance, then the body's not giving and taking where it needs. We need bacteria. To some degree, we need some sort of parasites, not overgrowth. We don't need overgrowth of bacteria. We don't need too little probiotics. We don't need too much of the wrong kinds. And so, what we're doing constantly is throwing, oh, Susie, my friend, takes XYZ, so I'm going to take it too because I'm sure I need that, right? No, we need to find out what we need for our individual selves because you can actually be doing more harm than doing good by adding some of those things in. And so with the gut, if it's the signaling mechanism. So you've probably heard it's our second brain, right? It is. They're interconnected. Our gut and our brain are interconnected. That's where the signaling happens with our hormones. And so if you have things like leaky gut, which is basically permeability in the intestinal lining, and you have, food molecules passing through into the bloodstream, the body is thinking it's a foreign invader. It's just food, right? It should be fine. Well, it's not because it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be in the intestinal tract. And so there you go, right? That just sets off an inflammation response in the body. And it's trying to go in there and spend all of its time trying to figure out what's going on when there's really not a problem, but there is, right? So we've got to fix some of those things that we may not even know are happening. Even candida, so yeast build up in the body. You don't have to have, you don't have to have eczema or a yeast infection to have an overgrowth of yeast in the body. You could just be burping a lot and not digesting your food properly. Maybe your hydrochloric acid isn't there. So kind of, going back to the hormones, all of that signaled from there. So when we don't have clear pathways, when the body's not detoxing properly, because you maybe have an MTHFR or a COMT gene SNP, then the body can't do the proper signaling. There's basically like a kink in a water hose, right? Everything's kinked and the flow can't keep going through where it needs to go. So then that's when you start to realize with, maybe you're trying to get pregnant and or you've had miscarriages and you're trying to figure out what's happening here. And a lot of times it's trying to understand where all those interconnections are and get back to the basics, back to that foundation. Because we get over consumed with those little things, right? We get consumed with the rash on the skin or the hair falling out, or the headaches. And we get so hyper focused on those individual pieces that we lose sight of the fact that it's the whole body and it starts in the gut. So I probably didn't answer your whole question.
Yeah, so you answered it partly, but I guess my specific question was,
Yeah.
um, what does it do to, let's say, the main hormones of progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone? Does it decrease? I know they imbalance them, but do they decrease them or do they just throw them off?
So the body can use up more of those hormones based on your lifestyle and situation. Also with aging, also with nutrient depletion. So all of those factors again, you're probably hearing me say the same things over and over again. And so when we look at things in the body, sometimes we may not know exactly, let's say a woman or a man has low testosterone. Maybe there's not a specific one root cause because there never are. And so, we have to look and see what we can do to provide nutrients to the body, get the gut under control, um, reduce inflammation, and hopefully those levels will start to turn on, basically start to produce like they're supposed to.
Okay.
Sometimes they don't because they've been suppressed for so long. We'll take birth control, for instance. So women who've been on birth control, it's a suppression of your hormones. And so young girls as young as 15 um, are put on birth controls because they have an irregular period. Well, you're supposed to. Like, you're not supposed to just hit puberty and everything's supposed to be right. I mean, we don't really see that with males because they don't have the cycling, but they do. We
Yeah.
just don't see that outward manifestation of it. And so our hormones are constantly changing throughout our entire lives from the time we're born until the time we die. So we're seeing all these ebbs and flows of hormones cycling up and down like they're supposed to. I mean, even as we approach menopause, our hormone levels start to change and shift. And that's how we approach menopause.
Okay.
And so a lot of it's a biological process. So when you start to see numbers changing depending on the age, so we look at all the factors. Again, we can't just say it's one thing,
Hmm.
but we have to get, back down to digging in the dirt and looking at the roots and seeing what are the things in someone's lifestyle that could be contributing because there's not always a test for everything.
Yeah.
I like to do a lot of tests like Dutch tests and look at cortisol levels because they're all interconnected. But that one test or two tests aren't going to always tell us it's this, right? So it's a constant detective work is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was as simple as like run this test, do this thing, and that's how it all works. But with the body, inflammation takes on different roles, and so it's manifested differently. So for some people, it could be depleting hormones. For some people, it could be attacking a gland like the thyroid. We can't always pinpoint that. And so that's the mystery. Where it's different with what I do holistically versus conventional allopathic medicine, where they say, oh, it's this, let's connect that to a pharmaceutical, for instance, because that's what they know. That's how they are able to patch that, in essence.
Yeah. So it sounds like inflammation does not have a direct correlation between specific hormones going up and down, but they impact their ability to function properly.
Yes, because again, they're all interconnected, right? You can't
Yeah,
just
they're all
have
interconnected.
progesterone sitting out there by itself, right? Or testosterone or estrogen. They're all interconnected and they all feed off each other. I mean,
Yeah.
testosterone um, can convert to estrogen, and so a lot of people don't know that. So instead of just giving estrogen, we look at testosterone. If we're low there, it converts over to the estrogen. So, good or bad, right? You can get too much estrogen, or you can fulfill the needs that your body had by just helping one part of that cycle.
Yes, and that brings me to this idea that I've heard before with cholesterol and how inflammation plays a role in cholesterol. Can you explain that connection?
Yes. So cholesterol is an inflammatory marker. So it really cholesterol doesn't really have a connection with heart disease, as we've been told for many, many years.
Wow.
Um, so it doesn't necessarily having a perfect cholesterol doesn't prevent you from having a stroke or heart attack. There aren't scientific documented studies that can exactly pinpoint that. What we see is that cholesterol binds, patches, and builds. So it basically, if you have a bridge that's broken, crumbling, or has cracks, the cholesterol is going to go in there and try to patch those things. And that could be other hormones. It could be, kind of a broken thyroid, right? Or gut health. So a lot of times the clients that come see me, their cholesterol is either like their total cholesterol is really high, maybe their triglycerides are elevated, their HDL is really low. And so the body's pulling and they're telling me they're eating good omegas and they're having avocado and they're doing all the things. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't, it doesn't correlate to your diet. Let's look deeper. And again, because cholesterol is going in and fulfilling that, it's going to increase that based on the inflammatory needs.
Hmm.
So as we see more inflammation, we see those cholesterol numbers spike up.
Interesting.
So the idea that we need to reduce cholesterol is not the best decision because we need cholesterol. That's the majority of what our brain is. And so we're seeing studies over and over that it's now kind of labeled type 3 diabetes, and it's basically a lack of cholesterol and there's formations that are happening in the brain, but lack of the cholesterol needed in the brain. And we're seeing Alzheimer's and dementia, even Parkinson's increase. They're neuro degenerative diseases, and it's due to neuroinflammation. So there's a lot of inflammation in the brain, and the body is not able to go in and take care of it on its own with increasing the cholesterol because we're put on statins to bring the cholesterol numbers down so it fits in a box.
Wow.
But I'm pretty sure if you looked at your genetics and my genetics and we looked at our labs, they're not going to be the same, right? We're two different people, two different seasons of life, and we were born from different parents, and so we can't be put in that same box. And so everybody's numbers are going to be slightly different.
Yeah.
And so, that's an important thing with cholesterol is that, it's not a freak out time. It's to say, oh, okay, cholesterol's a good guy. Let's not try to like take him out. I mean, he's helping the body do the right things. And cholesterol also binds to things. So again, it binds, patches, builds, and repairs. And it's needed. It's needed by the body for all different functions.
Yeah.
So, don't blame cholesterol for what, your donut did.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. And I've heard that from a couple of different people. So thank you for sharing that because you're right. We have been taught that cholesterol is a very bad thing. But I like how you said that they're the good guys. They're actually there to help. And they're there because there is inflammation and it's an inflammatory mark.
Yeah, and when we add things like good omegas, whether it's from supplementation, or eating some salmon or avocados, eggs, those kinds of things, we start to see the body again getting nutrients it needs, right? It's
Yeah.
all about balancing the nutrients it needs based on what it's being depleted of because of what it's using up every day. And you can't take a microscope and look into the body every day and say, oh, okay, you're depleted in zinc and you need a little bit of magnesium today and vitamin D and A. We don't. We just eat food. We think it's all going in. If our gut's messed up,
Yeah.
it's not being absorbed. So then we're in a state of malnutrition, even though we're eating all the time. And
Yeah.
we're wondering why our body's so out of balance. It's
Mm,
because all those things are getting depleted again from the toxicity and the
mm.
stress and the lack of sleep and the mental emotional effects that we have in our bodies. And it's all just depleting us. So we're just walking around like zombies every day.
Wow. Wow. And when it comes to fertility, getting pregnant, staying pregnant, for the woman and then for the man, his big contribution with having that healthy sperm, you really need all the nutrients because
Yeah.
all of those nutrients are going into building a whole new person.
Yes. Yes, and we have to have good food.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we gotta start there. I mean, if
Yeah.
people wanna just know, like, where do I start? Start eating whole foods.
Yeah.
Cut out the, processed foods. Eat organic when you can. Follow the
Yeah.
clean 15 and dirty dozen
Yeah.
idea. Wash your fruits and vegetables every day to eliminate, glyphosate and pesticides, chemicals, parasites,
Yeah.
um, because we don't wanna have all those things coming in
Yeah.
more than we can control, right?
Yeah.
So, change out your pots and pans and switch out your deodorant. I mean, there's just a lot of things. It can be very overwhelming. Um, if I was to sit down and write a list, it would probably be 100 pages long of things that, you need to do or should do. We can't
Yeah.
do them all.
No.
So I just tell people start somewhere, control the things that you can
Yes.
control. You can't control the air you breathe all the time or what you're exposed to at work,
Yeah.
but you can control what you're putting in your mouth.
Yes.
You can control when you go to bed, your attitude every day,
Yes.
and then slowly start changing out some of those things like body care products or pots and pans, to make them more um, healthy and non-toxic for you. So it's really a lot more complicated than we think it is.
It is.
But it's also super simple
Mhm.
because if we give the body the things that it needs, it does what we want it to do,
Mhm.
right? We are created perfectly and wonderfully made and by design, and we weren't created messed up. None of us were born a disaster. And so, we just have to go with what we've been given and we have to nurture it because we're only given one. You can't just go trade it in like you do your car.
Yeah. Like I tell many of my clients, we do the best that we can with what we have in
Yes.
the season that we're in. And
Yes.
if we're mindful of that, mindful of what is the best that I can do right now. Sometimes it's more than other times, but just knowing what you can do at that particular time. And as we kind of think about that, let's look into lab tests or different markers. What would you recommend if someone who is doing lab work, what should they be looking for when it comes to inflammation? You mentioned cholesterol is one of them. What are other
Yeah.
markers?
Vitamin D levels. So if they're depleted, we need to get those increased. We look at CBC and CMP. We're able to see things like liver enzymes, kidney function. We're able to look at also homocysteine levels. Um, HSCRP is an inflammatory marker and a risk for cardiovascular function. And so we look at a few of those. We look at cholesterol and not per se to say, oh, you have high cholesterol, low cholesterol. To me, there's no such thing. It's what cholesterol, where is your cholesterol? And let's look at a pattern over time, and see how your body's handling things. We also like to look at A1C, fasting insulin, and not just glucose number, because we want to see how insulin and blood sugar is affecting the body, how that can be creating inflammation. So a lot of people don't really understand that. I don't think I've had one single client ever come to me with all the right labs. And, that's debatable, I guess, between practitioners what the right labs are, but some just basic labs to give us the whole picture. When it comes to thyroid health, we can't just do a TSH level and say someone's good or not good. We need to evaluate all the hormones affected by thyroid. Right? And so we have to get, every one of them done. And that's the same thing with insulin too, is if we have too much circulating sugar in the body, then we've got to be able to regulate that, because again, that's causing inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's talk about food because I know food is a hot topic, and you've mentioned tons of different foods right off the bat that can fuel inflammation. But what are some of the most common foods that fuel inflammation, and which ones help fight it?
Oh yeah. So sugar. Um, and I'm talking sugar in the form of processed sugar, so white sugar, and that can come in many forms. It can come in, cane sugar in a bag. It can come in processed foods like donuts and cookies and chips and granola bars and pastries and a whole long list of those things. Um, and then also, I think some inflammatory foods would be nuts, particularly peanuts, not all nuts, but peanuts, because they have mold most of the time. They are a high mold food, so I don't recommend my clients eat peanut butter, um, that they switch to a nut butter or they make their own. There's a lot of good ones out there. And let me think what else. Oats. Um, Oats aren't, a terrible food, but I think we have to evaluate it similar to rice. Arsenic is a big, huge thing with rice. So you have to be looking for organic things of that nature. And when it comes to oats, glyphosate free, gluten free. So that brings up the point of gluten. And that's why oats are kind of sparingly. I make granola bars at home, but I use a glyphosate, gluten free, organic oat to make my own granola bars. And so gluten, it can affect intestinal permeability, so that leaky gut, so it puts holes in the juncture of the gut, so you have leakage into the bloodstream. And so when you have gluten, we think, oh, you have to have celiac. No, you don't. I would probably guess, if everybody in the world took a survey, that we all have some sort of sensitivity to gluten, because of the way it's processed and the way it's grown in the United States. And I'll give you a quick story about that. Uh, I've gone twice to Europe on vacation, because I can eat there. May sound really silly. It's an expensive way to be able to eat for a week, but I can eat whatever I want, non-gluten, or non I don't have to eat gluten-free, so I can eat anything like regular people eat. I can eat dairy, I can eat gelato 3 times a day, I can eat pizza, pasta, you name it. I never have to ask what's in the ingredients. Is it gluten-free? It's not. And I can eat it, and I feel better there for the week or however long I'm there than I do when I eat the healthiest I can eat here in the United States. So I say to myself, why? Why is that? Right? Um, and so it's because of the things that are in our foods. So again, if you have a farm and you can raise your own animals and grow your own garden, then great. That would be the best thing that you can do. But most of us don't have the ability to be able to do that. So we just have to make those conscious choices. So gluten is a big culprit. Dairy is also a big culprit. I know. RFK Jr. is trying to get some of the dairy things changed where people can actually have safe raw dairy because it's not been overly processed. It's got good probiotics in there. There's good cultures in there for our microbiome in our gut. And so, that's a big culprit as well because overgrowth of yeast can sometimes be attributed to too much dairy. So we see a lot of gut issues with gluten and dairy. I would say those probably are some of the top reasons that you have gut issues. Imbalances the hormones, causes, all kinds of things, even psychological effects with mental health from eating food.
Yeah. And with that, I know we're coming close to an end, but maybe
Yeah.
if you can list some of these things out, but beyond food, what other lifestyle factors can drive up inflammation?
Yes. So we talked about stress. I think we've talked a lot about stress. And so it's not about eliminating stress or balancing stress. There's really no such thing as that. If you breathe, you have stress. It's about ways to manage that. And so every day you need to have quiet time, reading your devotion, listening to a good podcast that's going to be encouraging and uplifting. Have a good circle of friends and people around you that are not going to be negative. And it's okay to get rid of people that are creating stress in your life. It's okay to say no, thank you for right now, for a season, or maybe for longer. Social media can be a stress. It can be good. It can also be a stress.
Yeah.
So sitting down and writing those things that cause you to be like, "Ugh," it may be a spouse or a child, and you might have to have some of those strong conversations with them. Like, I need help around the house because it's too much. And, it's too stressful for me. So it's not about balancing, but it's about reducing your reaction to this, the environment or the stimulus. So you can't control what your coworker says to you because they've had a bad day, right? But you can control how you respond to that, and that affects your stress. So, I would say that's one of the big things. The other thing is the foods we're eating. So I'm gonna, bring back that circle around too, because if we're eating lots of sugar and we're consuming alcohol or even, things like Monster every day to keep going in life, then it's gonna cause a lot of inflammation in the body because we're doing that. And if you're not getting your labs done and having them read by a practitioner like me that looks at them from a functional perspective,
Yeah.
not just the range that the lab denotes as your normal range, because that's a group of sick and healthy people. We want to be in an optimal range.
Yeah.
So it looks very different.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting testing done regularly to see where your nutrient deficiencies are and how your body is responding to things, then you're not doing yourself a favor. To me, it's more of a prevention. Like we get insurance, right, for our car and life insurance and medical insurance as our policy to help for the need if we have it, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what labs are for. It's like, the way to be able to look inside the body with the microscope. It doesn't tell us everything, of course, but it gives us that, kind of overview look to see what's going on. So when we find nutrient deficiencies or things that are a little abnormal, then we can say, okay, how do we replenish that? So most of the time, it's just about replenishing some simple things in the body to reduce that inflammation. And it's amazing how fast that works. And we see things like parasites on there. Believe it or not, most of us have parasites.
Yeah. And wonderful. And just wanted to see if there's any, as we're wrapping it up right now, any final thoughts or words of encouragement you have for the listeners regarding inflammation.
Yeah, I would just say listen to your body. That's the biggest thing. So many times we just dismiss the aches and pains and the feelings and the things that are happening to us. And we let someone else tell us that what we're feeling is not what we're feeling, or we're disregarded as it being important. And so if you don't find a practitioner that's going to listen to you and hear what you have to say about you, because again, you know yourself best, right? Then find another practitioner. It's okay to move on. It's okay, and to be an advocate for yourself. So again, it just comes back to that whole thing. Listen to your body and advocate for yourself. The more knowledge you have about your own body, the better decisions you'll be able to make in the future.
Yes, awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much. And if somebody has been listening to this podcast and they say, I want to connect with you a little bit more. How can they reach out to you to connect with you?
Yeah, they can reach me by phone. I think you're going to probably have that to be able to share in the show notes. Also by email, I do a free discovery call for everybody just to see if I'm a good fit for what you're looking for as a practitioner. And then they can also reach me at BeFit Wellness on Instagram and Facebook and connect that way. So all different forms.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on this podcast and sharing your knowledge about this. There's been a lot of moments for me, and I'm sure for the listeners, particularly things that we didn't really know about, like cholesterol. So I just want to say thank you again for your time and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on today.
And thank you so much, listeners. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, put it in the comment section, and I will see you the next time. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Empowered Fertility Podcast. If you're looking for personalized support on your journey, whether that's through therapy or coaching, please reach out. Just complete the contact form linked in the show notes, and someone from my team will be in touch with next steps. Remember, you are not alone. You are not broken, and your story is not over. See you in the next episode.